The great Benjamin Franklin in the late 1700s, he made a statement that said an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. And I think 200 years later, that is probably a more truer statement today than it was 200 years ago. So as I talk about, really the core foundation of Rocky Mountain Ag and what we specialize in, it's important that we understand that when we do Markout, that is a fundamental application. And it's right at the forefront of what makes everything work, particularly when we talk about phosphate. There's a lot of studies that have gone in, research that's been done on phosphate applications. There's actually 3 different types of application that we can do, one in the fall, and then there is also one pre-plant, and then one in season. Those are probably the 3 areas of phosphate application. If I can just briefly talk about the first one, if we're doing fall applications of dry, if we were to go out and spread tons and tons of dry, pounds on the ground as we would say, to try to elevate our phosphate efficiency with the antagonisms that are in our soils, putting pounds on the ground and trying to get a minimal amount that we know that we're going to get back from that is not very efficient. And so our return on investment is low. Because of that, that becomes our primary reason for wanting to do a Markout or a placement. And the timing of that is critical so that our availability of phosphate and our efficiency is very high. And so as we do that, as we prepare for that, we got to look at the antagonisms, the things we can't control. There are those antagonisms that affect nutrient uptake, and one of those being high pH, high bicarbonate, mainly calcium carbonate, or excess lime, or free lime as we know it. And then you've got a few others like sodium, salt, and chlorides. So we want to analyze that in the soil. We want to understand our soil health, and we want to understand those nutrient levels and what those antagonisms are before we ever establish a program that we're going to do as a Markout. The other thing that we want to analyze is our water. That's our biggest input, and we would assume that because of the antagonisms that are in our soil, that it's likely that it's in our water too. And we see that. So we take water tests and we see what those antagonisms are, which are again bicarbonate, sodium, salt, chlorides, all affect the uptake of nutrient within the plant. So as we look at those, as we pull soil tests, as we meet with growers and we pull those tests on soil and water, and as we sit down with the grower and we make a crop plan, and in this case, we're going to plant potatoes. So we sit down with the grower and we understand his crop history. That's number one, to understand really what our end goal or our end game is going to be. What he's done in the fall, his fall work, what he's helped prepare the ground. And then we sit down and we analyze all of the antagonisms from our soil and water, and then we look at the nutrient recommendation and how we're going to focus on that. We're going to put the most efficient, the most valuable nutrient down that's going to work best in that environment. So once we do that with the grower and we make a plan, then we as an agronomist, we write a prescription. And I would say that's probably the number one thing that sets Rocky Mountain Agronomics apart from any other company or any other agronomy individual in the field, is that we have the ability to not only analyze the tests, both soil and water, but to actually write a prescription for that will satisfy the need of the plant and the crop and meet our goals when we go to harvest. As we analyze that and we write our prescription, then we want a prescription that's going to go in our Markout. And when I say Markout, where we will go actually into the field and we'll create a row. And in that row, we're going to have a placement of that prescription in the center of the row, near where the seed's going to be planted. In the instance of a potato, whatever variety it is, once that stolon comes out and roots begin to be established, it taps immediately into that, what I'm going to call an IV, or a band, or a Markout band. And that IV becomes the food supply to that plant for the entire season. That Markout fertilizer, we're going to concentrate on phosphate. That's going to be our major component. And because of all of the antagonisms, we're going to focus on phosphate, that we want that to be completely available and the entire year's crop needs in that band so that we can satisfy the genetic potential for that crop. Once we do that, then we're off and running. Once that crop taps into that, our levels of our parts per million levels that come back from our petiole samples will be very high, which proves to us that that efficiency is working. and we're seeing a high level of activity there. And once that plant taps into that ivy, it's got everything. It's got some nitrogen, it's got a high amount of phosphate, it's got some potassium, it's got a high load of micronized sulfur, which is also key and sets us apart as an industry leader in that markout. The other thing, it's got a full load of micronutrients, and we address all of those issues in that markout. I think as you create that as a foundation for your crop in whatever it is you're growing, in a markout situation, if you will make that a core foundation to establishing the crop, that will be the best thing that you can do in helping to alleviate the antagonisms that you're going to face in season. And that is why we are the leader in custom formulation and fertilizer application.